So in our previous sessions, we are discussing about animation technology. And under animation technology, we had discussed about the history of animations, how animation have evolved over the years, and what actually animation is, and what are the various types of animations. And in continuation to that, today in this session, we are going to discuss few of the terminologies related to animations. So let's discuss the various terminologies. The first one is animation drawings, or we call them cells. So what actually meant by animation drawings or cells? So basically, uh, drawing, when we are talking about cell drawings, they are more concerned with 2D animations. So cell animation is the part of creating 2D animation by hand on sheets of transparent plastic, which is called cells. So any drawing, any feature you can create over a paper and referring to that paper, you can transfer that particular image or object or your drawing over a transparent plastic sheet, which is the cell. So it is basically a hand drawn images or objects that comes into picture. So this particular process have to follow the proper planning procedures. So it follows the planning process. Animators transfer draft drawings onto transparent sheets of plastic, which is called cells. And each cell features one drawing with an outline on one side of the plastic, and the color is to be filled on the other side. So whatsoever drawing we are making, its outline, that is the black outline, should be at one side. Okay, and the color you are going to fill in would be the other side. We are not drawing both the colors and outlines on the same side of the sheet. So we have to consider that as well, and these cells are then placed over a background and photographed in a sequence. So to portray the movement, एक पर्टिकुलर इमेज को, एक पर्टिकुलर सीन को मोशन में लाने के लिए हमें ऐसी बहुत सारी ड्राइंग्स, बहुत सारे फ्रेम्स बनाने पड़ते हैं, एंड ऑल आर प्रिपेयर्ड बाय हैंड ओनली, बाय ड्राइंग्स, बाय आउटलाइन, बैकग्राउंड्स, their coloration, all would be done by hands. So we have to prepare, we have to draw a sequence of photographs which are then rotated frame by frame to elusify the movement. So when they played back at a speed of, let's say, 12 or 24 frames per second, they create the illusion of movement. So when we are talking about cell animations, एक्चुअली हम क्या कर रहे हैं कि एक प्लानिंग से कि क्या हमें पोर्ट्रे करना है, कौन सा सीन विजुलाइज करना है, उसको हम पहले प्लान आउट करेंगे, उनके कैरेक्टर्स प्लान आउट करेंगे, उन कैरेक्टर्स को एक प्लास्टिक शीट पे हम ड्रॉ करेंगे विद आउटलाइन और बॉर्डर लाइन एट वन साइड एंड द इनर कलर्स एट द अदर साइड, और इस तरह के सीक्वेंस जो है हम फ्रेम्स के रेडी करेंगे, उन फ्रेम्स को हम मूव करेंगे, लेट्स से 12 फ्रेम्स पर सेकेंड और 24 फ्रेम्स पर सेकेंड, जिससे कि हमें पूरा का पूरा सीन, एक पूरे के पूरे सीक्वेंस की मोशन जो है वो मिलती है. And it's rare for traditional cell animation to be used in modern productions, since everything is now digital. So it is not adaptive nowadays too frequently, and we are more into computerized animations. So although today 2D animation borrows any like many techniques from cell animation, the work is almost exclusively done on computers. So nowadays we have evolved to the technology that these drawings can be prepared from digitization. These drawings can be prepared from your computers. So we can work with various tools over 2D animation to draw such cells and to generate a motionary image. And most 2D animations are still drawn by an animator, but digital software is used to speed up the process. So whole scenario, whole planning process, drawing process is accelerated by using the digital softwares. When we are talking about cell animation process, so cell animation process is a lengthy process and it is quite expensive process that demands the involvement of large team, because we have to first plan out certain things. We have to plan for whole sequence of what actually to be done, what the sequence will be, and what the motionary images will portray. So we have to plan for that. And also we have to draw these images frame by frame. So we have to work on individual image with very finished outlines and portraits. And then we have to decide for at what frame rate we have to sequence, we have to move those frames so that we can clarify with our motionary images. And the magic start with the script is handed over to a storyboard artist, so that work over the storyboard, they actually write whole script and format the characters. So, when we have created the storyboard sheets and scripts, once the timing is sorted with all these stuff with scripting, a leader, that is the animator, will draw rough sketches of each key pose and note the timing on a dop sheet. So dop sheet is an essential tool for everyone from director to colorist. It actually decides the frame rates and the sequence of frames. So it dedicates the length of time a movement takes and standardize the sequence of cells. So after the key poses are sketched out and the dot sheet completed, junior animators draw the in between to smooth the movement between poses. So the developer or the animator actually works over the initial and end poses, and in between a finish momentary would be done by the junior animator. So this is how cell animation is a whole team process, and it is that is why it is actually expensive and requires lengthy proceedings. So this is all about animation drawing and cells. Moving ahead, then the other terminology related to animation is rough drawing. So what actually means by rough drawing? As I have mentioned in the animation drawings or cells, that animator first script the storyboard and then they work over the rough drawings and then finalize the sequence. So what actually means by rough drawing? Basically, rough drawing is a preliminary sketch of a design or picture. So before finalizing any drawing, before finalizing any sequence, we work over the rough sketches. We portray the rough sketches and then rework over those sketches, and if any modification or editing is required, we'll do that, and then we move on to finalize those drawings or sketches. So it is always good to work with rough drawings because they actually save the additional cost for editing and modification. अगर आपने कोई भी इमेज है, कोई फ्रेम है, उसको फाइनलाइज कर लिया है, उसके कलरेशंस हो गई हैं, स्मूथनिंग वर्क हो गया है, सो वो सब होने के बाद then you decide to change something, then you decide to edit something in that drawing, that would be costly and time consuming as well. सो एक चीज़ पे आप ऑलरेडी पूरा काम कर चुके हो, उसको फिर मॉडिफाई करना, इट विल कॉस्ट यू अ लॉट. सो इट्स ऑलवेज बेटर कि आप उसको इनिशियल स्टेज पे ही मॉडिफाई कर लो. आप रफ स्केचेस बनाओगे, उस पे ही आप चेक कर लोगे कि आपको किसी मॉडिफिकेशन की ज़रूरत है. अभी आपने कलरेशन भी नहीं की, स्मूथनिंग वर्क भी नहीं किया, दूसरी टीम ने भी किसी ने काम नहीं किया उस पर, सो आप उसको इनिशियल स्टेज पे ही चेक कर लोगे, कंसल्ट कर लोगे कि अगर मॉडिफिकेशंस या एडिटिंग रिक्वायर्ड है तो आप उसी पॉइंट पे कर लोगे. So these modifications are done over the rough drawings. So they are quite beneficial and time saves, and it also saves your efforts as well as cost that you invest in drawings and finalizing those drawings and resources. So this is how rough drawing is helpful for you. Next, the terminology here is cleanups. So, what actually is meant by cleanups? Basically, in general terminology, when we are talking about cleanup, is what? It is actually removing the unwanted things, the maybe the dirty things, that is termed as your cleanups. And when it comes to animation, the artist doing the cleanup is responsible for the final line and finished look of the drawing. So after you are done with your scripts of storyboard, and then you are done with your rough images, rough drawings, and then you have finalized these drawings, you are done with all your coloration and smoothing, then cleanup is a process under which the artist or animator work to smoothen the lines, finish the lines, so that they can look and feel good. So cleanup animation is the process of creating the final drawings you see in the finished film. It does not necessarily means clean, uh, fine line, but maybe the finished coloration or finished sequence of frames is also matter. So all these things comes under cleanup. सो क्लीनअप में कोई भी एनिमेटर है वो ध्यान रखेगा, एक तो लाइंस जो हैं वो प्रॉपर होनी चाहिए, फिनिश्ड फाइनल लाइंस होनी चाहिए, उनकी कलरेशन ठीक होनी चाहिए, प्लस इमेजेस को मूव करने का सीक्वेंस जो है वो भी फाइन होना चाहिए, जिससे कि आपकी इमेजेस जो हैं वो प्रॉपर सीक्वेंस में हो, एक पर्टिकुलर मोशन को वो प्रॉपरली डिफाइन कर रही हो और क्लैरिटी के साथ डिफाइन कर रही हो, सो उसमें गैप्स नहीं होने चाहिए. सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स वुड बी डन अंडर क्लीनअप्स, and this particular process of cleanup is usually done by an assistant animator, not the leader or the key animator. So the junior animators or the assistant animators do all these tasks. So, when we are actually visualizing the particular motion or film or movie over the screen, it is not actually the animator's job, it is not actually the leader's job, but that work was done by assistant animators and the in-betweeners. So, what actually meant by in-between, I'll be discussing in a minute. So, whatsoever you are visualizing over the screen is assistant animators' work. The core animators, the leader, work in rough drawings, they work in the plannings, but not in the finalizing or finishing or cleanups. They don't work under that. So this particular job is only for the assistant animators. Then moving ahead, next we are having is model sheet. So what actually is the model sheet? Especially when we are talking about visual arts. In visual arts, a model sheet is known as a character board, character sheet, character study, or simply a study, you can say. It is basically a document used to help standardize the appearance, pose, and gestures of a character in art such as animation, comics, or video games. So, model sheet basically defines the standard for particular gesture. If someone is feeling happy, so how the hands should be, how the gesture should be, standing or sitting or lying, and how the expressions should be, and if there is this fighting sequence, so what can be the poses for fight sequence. So those poses are inbuilt and they are provided by model sheets. So we don't actually have to work over and over again over creating and generating these poses, but we already have these poses over the model sheet, and we can just use them and customize them according to our sequence. So, model sheets are required when multiple artists are involved in the production of an animation, like a film, game, or comic. So, basically, it helps to maintain continuity in the character from scene to scene. So, when multiple people are working, multiple ideologies are there, multiple work patterns are there. So, to standardize those patterns, so standardize those thinkings, we work with model sheets, and they actually provide a continuality in poses. So it doesn't happen if over one frame someone is looking like this or standing, or another frame it is just sitting down, lying down. It should not be there. It should be in the proper sequence. And in animation, one animator may only do one shot out of the several hundreds that are required to complete an animated film. A character not drawn according to the production standard model, but according to the animator. So model sheet is usually used for references in 3D modeling to guide proper proportions of models. So unlike cell animations, model sheets, they work with 3D modeling. So basically, model sheets have also been used in the past to maintain the graphic continuity over the years for long lasting cartoon productions of short or short features. So they have used under this the model sheets, because you must have seen the cartoon character appears almost same over different scenes or over different frames. So they basically use the model sheet where the appearances remains same and the gestures remains same. Like if we are talking about the cartoon, the most popular cartoon Tom and Jerry, so when Tom is standing, it should pose like Tom, and the body language should pose like Tom. So they use the standardized model sheets for that, so that there is no variation in the gestures, body language, or poses. So this is how we can make use of model sheets. The next terminology that is very important and associated with animation is A keyframe. So what actually is a keyframe? A keyframe is, especially in animation and filmmaking, is a drawing or shot that defines the starting and ending point of any smooth transition. So when someone is standing and then afterwards in over a sequence of frames it lays down. So the standing pose and the sitting pose is, or the lying pose is, what your keyframes, because it have started from one scenario to the other scenario. Or if someone is shooting, so if there is a fight scene, they just take off their gun and attempts to shoot. So the starting will be when they are taking off their gun, and afterwards the ending will be when the gun was shot. So they both are the, basically they both are the keyframes which defines the starting and ending point of transitions. So in between frames are termed as your in-betweens that I'll be explaining. So we, with keyframes, we are working with the only the starting frame and the ending frame. That is the starting or ending point. And in between smooth transitions would not be considered. So these are called frames because their position in time is measured in frames on a strip of film, or maybe on a digital video editing timeline. A sequence of keyframes define which movement the viewer will see, whereas the position of the animation, the keyframe on the film, video, or animation define the timing of the movement. Because only two or three keyframes over the span of a second do not create the illusion of movement, the remaining frames are filled with in-betweens. So let's move ahead to in-betweens. What actually meant by in-between? Because we are speaking a lot about in-between. So what actually meant by in-between? So when we are talking about in between, so in betweening or twinning, we can say, is the key process in all type of animations, which includes in your computer animation. So it is the process of generating intermediate frames between two images. So when we are working with keyframes, that is the starting or end of the frame, all the in between frames, the sequence of frames would be termed as your twinning or in betweening. So in betweening is the drawings which create the illusion of motion. लेट से कोई भी एक सीक्वेंस शो करने के लिए हमें 12 फ्रेम्स चाहिए. सो 12 फ्रेम्स से हमें एक पर्टिकुलर मोशन मिलेगी. ठीक है. सो अगर एक आदमी खड़ा हुआ है, उसको हमने बैठा हुआ शो करना है. सो खड़े होने की मोशन और बैठने का जो जेस्चर है, दैट बोथ आर योर की फ्रेम्स. सो खड़े होने से बैठने तक उसको बीच के जितने भी 10 फ्रेम्स और चाहिए, दैट विल बी टर्म्ड एज योर इन बिटवीन. और इन 12 फ्रेम्स को जब हम मोशन में सीक्वेंस में चलाएंगे तो हमें ऐसा लगेगा कि एक आदमी खड़ा था और वो बैठ गया. तो इतने तक हमें 12 फ्रेम्स बनाने की ज़रूरत है, और इन 12 फ्रेम से हमें मोशनरी इफेक्ट आएगा. So the standing and sitting one gesture is your key frame, and in between frames are all termed as your twinnings or in betweenings. So basically, in-betweening is the process of generating intermediate frames between two images called keyframes, and to give the appearance that the first image evolves smoothly into the second image. And in-betweens are the drawings which create the illusion of motion. So these were the few terminologies, and there are few other terminologies as well. But as if now we are winding up this session, and we'll be continuing a few other animation terminologies in our next session. So today in this session, we have discussed about animation drawings or cells, rough drawings, cleanups, model sheets, keyframes, and in-betweens. So if anyone is having any kind of doubt here, may ask the questions.